welcome to episode number 13 of What Sex Got to Do with It. And we're here with my favorite 84-year-old great grandmother on the whole planet.
Well, Len, you know what? Maybe I'll just have to live a real long time, and then you can start with my favorite great grandmother.
Yes.
That's a goal to strive for, right?
Yes,
Is it?
definitely,
Okay.
definitely. And the fact that you say you kind of started off,
And then there wouldn't be so much competition.
You know,
Yeah.
the thing about being a late bloomer, I mean, I think means that it's just all just kind of shifted. So,
Means I have to live a long time in
Yes.
order to do everything I've wanted to do.
Yeah. So let's have it. But this chapter 12 is called Economics of Desire. As we always do, what's the basis?
Okay, the basis for this is that sexual desire, particularly in women, can be triggered by the economic prowess of the man in question. And I say can be, it often is.
Right.
The women I interviewed, the trait that headed the list, intelligence, of course, but that's kind of a generic term. People mean different things by intelligence. But control of material resources was at the top of the list, the trait that influenced a woman's choice of her partner.
This is going to be a hard chapter for me to interview you on, because there are just so many questions I have on this one. I could really spend easily an hour talking with you, probably an hour and a half. So I might be a little rude.
Oh, be rude.
Sometimes and cut you off because I'm just going to try and get a bunch of questions in. But I love listening to you. So you talk about how that when we do surveys or whatever, it becomes apparent that for women, an older man, is preferred, and for men, a younger woman is preferred. First off, is that across cultures?
Yeah, I think so. Although my area of expertise is within this culture, so I don't want to speak for all cultures.
Right.
When you say women prefer an older man, it's not the age that they're selecting for.
Right.
It's age. Enough time enables a man to accumulate resources. In this, when I did my research, there was no internet dating scene. But today, in the era of internet dating scene, one of the statistics that was in, again, the New York Times and the Washington Post inform a lot of my ideas, that was reported in the paper, was because it's easy to measure how many swipes left, swipe right. That men, the ideal age for women, in terms of what men preferred, was 18. In terms of women, the ideal age for men, I think, was 55. That doesn't really mean much, except that a 55-year-old man has had much more time to establish some economic stability. I think if an 18-year-old woman saw a 22-year-old man with the same control of economic resources that would be more likely found in someone 55, his youth would not work against him. So I think it is correlated to just economic security.
Well, with the preference though for younger women, wouldn't just, you say our brains are wired for reproduction, and so there would be a preference on younger women because there would be more reproduction potential.
Oh, absolutely, that's it.
Yeah.
And youthful vigor. Young women look healthier, stronger. They move more easily. So they're good choice if you want healthy children, and they have more years to be reproductively active. So yeah, there's a reason. There are evolutionary reasons. Obviously, there are people who run counter to that, but we're used to seeing men who, were they not wealthy, would not be sporting the trophy wife on their arm, what we call a trophy wife, that they are. And that's kind of a cliche, the old man with his trophy wife, which may be his fifth or sixth wife, because as they age, he might tend to divorce them, and his wealth enables him to attract a younger woman. That's not particularly behavior that I would recommend or that I personally admire, but I think we all are aware of the existence of that behavior.
Right, gotcha. So this is a minor curiosity question, because you mentioned that most men and women do eventually have children. Do you happen to know what percentage?
That's hard data to find. There is more women reproduce than men.
Okay.
But it's hard to get the exact figure. But in fact, women are more personally reproductively successful than men are.
Interesting.
Because
that's really interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, because women are selective, and so they're trying to mate up. And so if a man is sort of at the bottom of the economic pile, he's going to have a harder time finding a partner. I
mean, I get you. Okay.
Yeah. So yes, women are more selective than men are in terms of choosing their partners for all kinds of things.
I get that.
Yeah.
But then you said that so essentially, I think the conclusion I'm drawing is that women will choose they're more selective about the men that they choose, and because of that, fewer men get chosen. So it would,
like one man, I just was talking about a very wealthy man who might have multiple wives.
Right.
That's one man, say he's had 5 wives and had children with all of them.
Right. Right.
That means there are a bunch of men that might have wanted to have children with those women who have been shut out.
Yeah. So
that's how it works.
Right. So I was really trying to get at how the
dynamic of it.
Well, not so much the dynamic, but that's part of it, but also how you end up with a mismatch between, because you would imagine that you'd have equal number of men and equal number of women in having children. So are you saying that there are more men who have multiple wives over the course of their life
or have children with multiple wives?
And there are women that have children with multiple men. Okay, got it.
Like I've been married twice, but I've had children with only one man.
Right.
My second husband was very, very generous about contributing to the well-being of my children.
Right. Well, was that a timing issue or a choice issue?
Oh, it's a choice issue. He had a child from a former marriage. I had 2 children from a former marriage. Neither one of us wanted more children.
But was that a possibility?
I was young enough that I could have had more children.
Okay, that's what I was asking. Okay. Yeah.
But his enthusiasm, more than willingness, his absolute enthusiasm to invest in my existing children was one of his charms, I must confess. Not only my children, but every time he came to see me, he brought dog biscuits for my dog. I mean, the man was a master of courtship feeding. He not only fed me, he fed my kids, he fed the dog.
Fed the dog. When you said that,
how could I not fall in love with this man?
In the generosity thing, because you were saying that's one of those what do you call it? Not soft traits. You call it. There's a term you use for those types of traits. Generosity was one of them that you think that women could be selecting.
Oh, women do select for that.
But you called it something. You called it.
I did.
Yeah, I'll scroll back at some point and get it. I'll mention folks at the beginning of the next chapter, because I'll scroll back and find it, because you called it a certain kind of trait that generosity was.
Generosity. I mean, really, for a woman who has children, when Jean, that was my second husband's name, and I was a poor, starving graduate student when he met me. I mean, my kids and I were living on a very minimum income.
Yeah.
And he would take us out to a Chinese restaurant and essentially order everything on the menu. My 2 kids, his daughter, and any of their friends who wanted to come were more than welcome. Early on in our marriage, and Jean and I married very quickly after we met, my daughter looked at all the food coming to the table and looked up at me and said, "Don't you just love Bops? He's so excessive."
Yeah.
And he was. He was over the top generous in all ways.
Well, food is way to a person's heart. So look, I just have to. One of the other things that I really enjoy about reading, your writing is, I think you're a really good writer. You have a way of turning a phrase. So we're talking about 50 Shades of Grey, and you say, Fifty Shades of Grey is less about the erotic turn-on of bottom spanking and more about the economic turn-on of the bottom line. Actually, let me read that correctly. It's less about the erotic turn-on of bottom spanking and more about the economic turn-on of bottom lines. That's a great. That's really good. But you do say that. What kind of makes it not so creepy is that it's a wealthy guy, and that if he had been a poor guy, it would have a whole different tone, be more like a stalker, and maybe an abuser, But how about this? What if it was a penniless woman dominating a billionaire?
A penniless man?
No, penniless woman.
A penniless woman
dominating
a billionaire. Yeah. Well, I'm sure he would be paying her plenty to dominate him.
Okay, now you didn't take my premise. You took my premise and you changed it. Let's stay with my premise.
A woman. Give me feed that to me.
Sure. So would it be creepy if it were a penniless woman dominating a very wealthy man?
Not quite as creepy, maybe, because. She's not exploiting his need for income. So it's not, the fact that a very wealthy man is sexually dominating this penniless woman, in some sense, he's really exploiting her vulnerability, her economic vulnerability. Yeah. So in the case where it's what was it?
A penniless woman.
A poor woman dominating a billionaire man. She's not exploiting. He's not economically vulnerable. It's happening because he wants it to.
Yeah. And that was just kind of a fun question for me.
No, it was fun to think about.
Yeah. So I'm bouncing around a bit here because, like I said, there's just so much in this chapter. And so you talk about greedy people. And it's essentially the problems caused by greed. Do you think people who are greedy realize that they're greedy?
Oh, wow. I'm not a psychologist.
Do you think they just rationalize me?
Oh, I think they rationalize it, sure. Yeah. I think they rationalize
because
it.
The character in Wall Street, Gordon Gekko, he said greed.
Greed is good, yeah.
People often forget, though, that parenthetical phrase that he then says, like greed, for lack of a better word, is good. And so for me, that to me was sort of like, you could say, well, he embraced the greed. But with that parenthetical phrase, though, kind of softens it up, and then you kind of realize.
Give me the parenthetical phrase.
It's like greed, for lack of a better word, is good.
Yeah, I don't think there's a better word for greed. I think that's a little bit of rationalization going on there, right. For lack of a better word.
So then you think
greed is not good. Controlling more of the resources. Controlling so many resources that by your controlling them, other people are being denied, and that's what greed is. That is not good.
Yeah, well, so I wasn't saying it was good. So I was just kind of quoting.
No, I didn't think you were.
But really what I was getting at, though, is that do you think that people who are greedy realize that they're greedy?
I think we're all very good at rationalizing. I don't have more than my share. I've earned this. I've worked hard for it. Nobody wants to believe that what they have did not come to them honestly, quite frankly.
Right.
I'm good at doing that myself. This very generous man that I was married to worked for a very large corporation, and his quite nice salary was built on the backs of people paid minimum wage scooping mashed potatoes in college dorms.
Yeah.
And I don't like to look at the fact that I have a nice condo in Arlington, and I do love my condo, that was paid for by people who weren't earning the money they needed just to have what they needed. And so I myself am good at rationalizing the origin of wealth.
Right.
And certainly my husband who was a generous man,
right,
and would give anybody literally the shirt off his back. Neither one of us were very good managers of money.
right,
He would not like to think that his salary came at the expense of someone else. He absolutely believed that his talent was fully earned, and yet I say absolutely less so than most people, because he did one time say to me, he was 5 years older than I am, he said, I'm a very privileged generation. He said, I graduated from college,
right.
Men my age did not have to compete with women, people of color. Any job that I applied for, I got. He said that, the economy was booming post-Second World War, and he said, so I don't know what it's like to apply for a job and have any kind of competition. And that points to, so he did have an awareness of his privilege that came of being white and being male. I mean, the privilege born of being white and being male. And my privilege is born of having been married to someone who was white and male.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's very touching. I did. Trust me, it was not my intention to get to that emotional state.
I love conversations. We learn from each other.
Yeah.
And as I was saying to you before we started this session, a question you asked me a few sessions ago, I woke up one morning thinking, I know the answer to that question now. So it's so good to be in dialogue with people, because that's how my theories develop.
You can always email me, or you can even call me when that happens. and don't have to worry about waking me up, because I turn the volume of my phone off when I go to bed. So you can always just Len, I thought of the answer to that, and I love it.
So that's now part of my explanation of how the first children born of that chromosome fusion happened to have mates. And I'm going to just quickly give it here. I think it's possible. COVID has made me aware of it. Look at all the body parts that a COVID infection can hit. Neurologically, lungs, heart, liver, reproductive organs, COVID toes, taste buds, impacts whole body organs. Look at our genome. There is what used to be referred to as junk RNA and junk DNA, just because we didn't know what it did. Then it was called dark RNA, non-coding RNA. Those are viral in origin. And imagine if there'd been a huge pandemic that somehow, whatever the virus was, weakened the telomeres on the end of the second chromosome. Which I now believe is possible because of what COVID has taught us. So, most viruses aren't studied that closely. People can have COVID and not know they have it, and yet it can be impacting body parts. And so imagine that the second chromosome, the telomeres were just a little weaker than normal, and this pandemic came through the non-human primate population, and weaken those telomeres enough that suddenly chromosome fusions are happening more frequently than they would have. And so that, when you were asking me who would that Adam or Eve have mated with, I thought, it could have been the result of a viral infection. So see, that's what conversations make me think. I wish I'd thought of it before I wrote the book, but hey.
Time for another book from the late bloomers, all right? But you know what? So focusing on the greed thing, So, look, greed, I think, to a certain extent, it's kind of wired in, because we want more. And as you said, our language allows us to accumulate more, whereas other species can't. So it's not like they wouldn't; they just can't because they don't have the language.
Absolutely, more is, in fact, Michael J. Ryan's book. A Taste for the Beautiful is what alerted me to this obsession with more, and he was not speaking about humans. It's true in all species, but they're limited physiologically, and humans are not. Symbolically, we can control everything.
But given that greed is such a motivating factor, do you think we could maybe pay people to incentivize them to do things that would be good for the environment?
Oh, yes. Or charge them. Rather than pay them to do things that are good for the environment, charge them for doing things that are bad for the environment.
But I generally think that carrot works better than
the
the stick.
carrot does work better than the stick.
If you hit that dopamine response,
the carrot works better than the stick.
So maybe that's the way to kind of get people, to trying to pay them.
There are people now who are very given to service.
Yeah.
That are already doing things that are good for the environment. A lot of people, particularly young people.
Right.
It's already happening. I don't think that's the solution to our environmental problems. The goodwill of people who feel good, or even get paid, like working in, like Teach America, those kinds of programs. That if they have a program, you're doing environmental
So you don't
good.
think that's...
It's not sufficient. It's good. It makes people aware. It raises an awareness of environmental damage. But I think if we want to change, can't let people we're economic animals. We respond to cost-benefit signals.
Right, that's why I was getting
if something, it's good, the benefit, but also the cost signal. We have the cleverness. Those people who are good at algorithms, which I'm not, can look at any item we buy, this cup, this table, and calculate what the environmental cost of everything that went into it is, and charge. For example, organically grown food ought to be cheaper than factory food.
Right.
Because factory food has inflicted a terrible cost on the environment, factory food production. But what those corporate farmers do, they privatize the profit and socialize the cost.
Right.
Once you begin charging for the cost of food produced that way, then it flips, and then the reward is food that doesn't damage the environment and its production is actually cheaper. When you charge what are called the externalities, all the externalities associated with producing a product, if the product reflects that cost, rather than corporations, and they do it, almost all of them do, privatizing the profit and socializing the cost.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. It's just that once again, I'm trying to think of how do we get to a point that is better in a way that is politically palatable. And so I think that we trying to force those who have to pay more is just going to create a lot more resistance than if you try to create a system where you tell those who don't have, we are going to give you money to do the right thing. And they could then create the political drive to do it. If you say this is what we're aiming for, this is why we want to tax these other individuals. And so, sure, the wealthy are still going to have to pay more, but it's being driven by people who go, but you know what, there's something in it for me, and what's in it for me is actually going to help the environment too.
I think that's a good idea. I just don't think it's enough, Len.
All right.
I don't think it's enough. I think it's a good idea.
Right.
I think a lot of that is happening already.
Yeah.
But we have to get money out of politics.
Right.
That's a tough one. That's tough.
Yeah.
Because who would vote the programs that take money out of politics?
Right.
The very politicians who are benefiting from those programs. So I think exposing what's going on, I think privatizing profit, socializing cost, I think once people catch on, hey, wait a minute, that's not right. Yeah. I think a recognition, hey, there's something not right about that. And maybe there'd be a level of shame, and I don't know.
Yeah, I hear you. So I have two ways to go here. So growth. Is any growth really sustainable? I mean, certainly compounded growth is not.
Yeah, compounded growth is not. I think.
What about linear growth?
I think some growth is sustainable. But the thing we have to keep in mind, we have a finite planet.
Right.
And we are a species with infinite desires, imposing our infinite desires on a finite planet. I think once we realize that we are we're killing the goose that's laying the golden egg, actually.
Right.
hey, wait, what we're doing is going to make life untenable for future generations, I think then we may begin to reevaluate. Certainly, we can use resources more efficiently, and that makes growth more sustainable. There's a sustainable growth. I mean, I remember how many years ago they predicted we were going to run out of oil, we haven't run out of those things. And in part because of our technological skills, we've switched to other resources, but also because we've learned to use those things more efficiently. So, and what forces the efficient use of a resource, a scarce resource? Charging the appropriately cost for using it. If you have to pay a lot for, say, oil or electricity, you begin to use it more carefully. You use less of it. You figure efficient. You design things that you can get the same outcome with less input of a scarce resource. So that
Gotcha.
can happen.
Gotcha.
That can make it more sustainable.
Right. Well, as I said, I was going to bounce around a bit, so going to bounce over to you say, I think this is talking. Who says this? You quote quickly scanning from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. I guess that was a popular slogan in the socialist movement.
Yeah.
And he said today's corporate capitalism would be, say, summarized from each according to his ability to each according to his power. But isn't power actually, isn't it always about power? It's because even in a democratic system, you still have to enforce the laws. So it is going to be like the power of the majority. So really, I think it's really a matter of do those in power then watch out for those who aren't in power. So it's always about power, right?
Yeah, a few sessions ago, you brought up the issue, we got into positive power and negative power. I think it always is about power, but there are ways to design policies that keep power from being exploitive. And I think I would focus on exploitive power. Some power is exploitive, and we have to design policies that punish for exploitive power and charge for exploitive power. But you have to pay.
Yeah, and also power that looks out for those who don't have power, because even though the majority should win elections, it doesn't mean that the majority and then gets to abuse the minority. So I feel that leaders often they get elected by the majority, but they have to then look out for the minority.
And I think maybe that's a distinction we need to make: leadership versus power.
Right.
Leadership is controlled or is concerned with everyone. Power is not. Power is wanting for yourself. Whereas leadership, so you want to elect leaders, not people that are just powerful. We're drawn to powerful people, but I think as voters and as citizens, we have to, and as women choosing partners, to make a distinction between someone who's just interested in raw power and someone who's a leader. And there is a distinction, a pretty major one.
And it sounds like you're talking sense to a species with all the answers. That's going to be the next chapter. Thank you, folks.
Well, Len, we're crazy.
Yes we are.